You are listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. This show is dedicated to those who live and love from the heart in infinite ways. In today's episode, we will discuss, share, gain insights, and get clarity on the wisdom and teachings of the mystic and seer Almin, as well as discover more about the miraculous healing modality called Belvaspata. Your host for this show is Paul.
One who lives authentically from the heart is self-referring for approval. To such one, leadership as a means of persuading others is meaningless. He or she simply shines like the brightest star in the sky, and others seeing such a light are inspired to find their own. That's opening comment from the mystic and seer Almin. Good evening, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. This is your host, Paul. You're listening to Radio Belvaspata, South Africa. Our show today is entitled Authentic Self-Referring Cosmic Realities, and we are going to be sharing all sorts of processes, talking about the extraordinary events that are occurring on Earth right now, especially after the cosmic closure of linear time, which has been happening, from the end of the year 2012. A new reality is forming in the midst of the human matrices and paradigms that will enable the major light workers to exist beyond the limitations of man. Godhood has become achievable to the few and the eventual destiny of the many. In today's show, we probe the deeper insights and information of how heaven on earth can become our constant reality through clear explanations by Almin and other sources of wonderful inspiration. In earlier shows, we've opened up discussion about self-realization, about self-referring processes, and what conditions and realizations we live in and under. When will we fully realize that we are the gods now, and that the old paradigms, beliefs, and stories are no longer relevant or justified? We hold on to the old out of fear, out of guilt, and because we feel there are certain values associated with this that still hold meaning for us. All of this has now gone. When will we actually realize and begin to work with it all? For our opening track, we have an Almin audio, and she's talking about some of the courses that she's given on bringing heaven to earth, and it's about God consciousness and entering Godhood, which was a course from about 2 years ago.
This new reality that is being born on earth can only be called bringing heaven into matter, bringing heaven to earth. And I am not talking about matter the way we knew it. It is false. It was a mirror. And there is this love affair that the corruptible matter, which is an unreal vehicle, has had with dying and the dead, which is the soul. And it is time for these unholy alliances to end and for incorruptibility to be part of everyday life. Everything we thought we knew belonged to old matrices. Do we really want to bring it back? Do we really want to live those old matrices of corruptible matter and death and lifespans and the control by spirit? No, we're moving beyond this. It is only when we surrender to life and appreciate it fully with opened centers in the body that creates such an ecstatic experience of life that we no longer can begin to equate it with the old way of being. The way of learning through opposition, it's not the way of Godhood. So what exactly is taking place? Gods who try genuinely to live their reality, to be of the earth? No, but to be in the earth, yes. They walk amongst the masses, and so what happens? is that they find that they keep being pulled back out of the level they want to live, back into the human games. It is to this group that we are targeting this information, because this group needs their own platform. They need their own reality. They try and successfully live their godhood with everything in their power. It is their primary focus, not the fulfillment of their emotional or physical needs. But they keep being drawn out because they have nothing to move towards. This is about to change and is changing as a God reality is forming amongst men, making it more accessible to those who wish to evolve beyond humanness, and making it very much more easy for those to understand what godhood entails, something we will be studying next month and the month after. What exactly does it entail? How do I live as a God being? This first month is dedicated to understanding the gifts that they bring the planet, what it is, and so forth. And also a very close look at the magic of the gods, third ring magic.
You're back in studio with your host for the show. My name is Paul. I'd like to say thank you all for joining us for this show. It is going to be exciting, exhilarating, and very inspiring. And for our American family, we'd like to say happy Thanksgiving. And quite mischievously, I'm going to say to our South African family, for us, it's doomsday. And you'll know what I'm talking about on that particular level. So Almeen has given a happy Thanksgiving message to everybody in Almeen Diary. Beautiful picture of her there, absolutely beautiful. She says that today is a very important day for our American Light family. It is Thanksgiving, a day of giving thanks for the many blessings and especially to spend with family. I will always remember with gratitude what a spectacular global family I have. How you stood by me with love and support during these recent past extremely hard years. It brings tears to my eyes when I think of how some of you with your donations helped put food on my table during a time that I couldn't earn. I felt such an outpouring of love and support that it helped me walk and talk again and fight my way back from where I was during the 5 weeks of coma. My deepest love and respect to you, to our support team. Without you, there would be no vehicle now to share this beautiful journey with my family. Thank you from my heart. Happy Thanksgiving to you all. And that's from the Mystic and Sia Almeen. I must say the cosmic mantras that have been coming up daily this week have all been really so deeply inspiring and bringing out the quality of gratitude this week. You can see just mixing it with aspects of working with nature, walking in nature, and just this absolute feel of gratitude. Here in Johannesburg, we have had the great fortune of having had continued rain where our dams are now refilling up and we're over the halfway mark and there's so much more rain forecast to come. Absolutely beautiful experience to see everybody just in gratitude of the rain and no one complaining, and just being able to work on that particular level of gratitude, because everybody has realized that we can't take anything for granted, that it is all there and that we have to use it according to its source and its resource as it is. I'm just spellbound by the way I see people staring out at the rain and being absolutely grateful for it. And for me, it's been beautiful just be able to stand up in the morning or stand up in the middle of the night and just go and stand outside and walk on the soft, wet grass and feel the soft earth underneath me and listen to the wind through the trees and just be at one with nature. That for me is an absolutely special moment, and I am completely in gratitude for that ability to do with it. So in that audio, Almeen was talking about learning through opposition is not a path of godhood. And I'd like to just share that I was discussing with a friend today certain aspects of, my goal is for myself is to learn a lesson immediately that I need to learn it. And I just want to share that we were talking that and saying that, if we're still suffering through something or the other, whatever it is, then we still have a lesson to learn in that aspect. And so it's best to take the lesson and apply it, because understanding that there's a lesson to be learned is not the same as applying it in one's particular life. And of course, we're talking about relationships around us. We're talking about people. We're talking about events. And we're talking about also learning the lessons of gratitude and these beautiful ascension qualities that all of us are studying. So, let's just ask now, when will we see deeply and properly that we can no longer straddle the divide of living in two lives of extremes, and that the old is destructuring very, very rapidly? Duality no longer exists except in our needs and our desires, perhaps in our thoughts on some level. Everything has shifted except one thing, and that's our commitment to living in the moment, etc., etc. So we'd just like to ask you, please check your level of commitment to being able to live in the moment and to work with all of these incredible teachings that the Seer Almeen gives us day in and day out, and just absolutely flows from her. And the amount of information that is coming in is just really fascinating. Lots of different discussions that are happening online in Almeen Diary, and if you are connected through lightworker.co, then please go and keep up to date with that, because the information that unfolds on both of those particular sites for me is absolutely mind-blowing and life-altering. Sigmund Freud, in A Difficulty in the Path of Psychoanalysis, writes that the ego is not master in its own house. And I think that's a very pertinent question for tonight. He also wrote in the book Civilization and Its Discontents that most people do not really want freedom, because freedom involves responsibility. And most people are frightened of responsibility. And that so describes many of the conversations most of us or many people are having here in South Africa when we talk about some of the practices and processes that we see going on around us. And of course, we have to understand the diversity of the process is also representative of what is going on within the self. In a little while, we talk about some of the messages that Almeen has answered in Almeen Diary, etc., where she goes into having to work with the self and taking us back to being fully responsible for the self. But the main thing for me is learn the lesson and see what needs to be done at this particular moment, and then do it without wondering what has to be done or wondering about repercussions necessarily, but understanding that a lesson is always a blessing when we put it into action. Sigmund Freud also wrote something that was quite interesting along the way. It's entitled, We Are the Gods Now. So long ago, man formed an ideal conception of omnipotence and omniscience, which he embodied in his gods. Whatever seemed unattainable to his desires or forbidden to him, he then attributed it to these gods. Now he has himself approached very near to realizing this ideal. He has really nearly become a god himself, and that's Sigmund Freud. And remember, he passed in 1938. So we can see already the beginnings of some of this processes that we're working with in humanity, and as we move into Godhood, as evolution and ascension occurs, you can see that those thought processes were still within humanity. And of course, because Sigmund Freud developed the psychological basis for a lot of mental health issues on our planet, whether we understand them or believe them, but he was still the founding father for many of those particular things. So if he was having those thoughts, then of course he could see this all within humanity. We're going to play an audio from someone called Jason Silver, and he was born in 1982, and he's a television personality. He's a filmmaker and a public speaker. His goal is to use technology to excite people about philosophy and science. The Atlantic described Silver as a Timothy Leary of the viral video age. Silver, a former presenter on current TV, lectures internationally on such topics as creativity, spirituality, technology, and humanity. Writes and produces short films and co-hosts National Geographic's Brain Games. In the video, The Mirroring Mind, Silver explores human consciousness and the creation of that consciousness through self-reference. So what we're going to do now is play this audio by Jason Silver, and it's really called Mirroring Gods, and enjoy the inspiration of the journey.
Us human beings are such ambitious creatures. We dream of cosmic expansion. We dream to soar the heavens, to transcend the biological shackles that limit us. And I think one of the most interesting ways in which we rehearse our own ambitions, is through the use of metaphorical entities, Greek and Roman gods being the best example. This is a way for us to safely idealize ourselves. This is where we can, without censorship, aspire to be. And of course, by labeling them gods, we don't have to admit that it's really us who long for those attributes and qualities of omniscience and omnipotence. Whether it's Bacchus, the Roman god of wine and intoxication, or Morpheus, the god of dreams, right? Or Prometheus, who stole the fire from the gods, right? Or Adam, who bit from the apple, the tree of knowledge, when you look at computer companies like Apple, that is a reflection of that Promethean spirit of stealing fire from the gods. All the world's knowledge and information stored in the Google database. The literalization of our dream, our psychedelic Promethean dream of mind expansion. To be as gods, having invented the gods, we can turn into them. This is the human yearning. This is what we want. We should just come out of it, admit it to ourselves already, and go about actualizing this potentiality within us to free the brave, reckless gods within us all.
That was an inspiring audio from the television and personality and filmmaker, public speaker called Jason Silva. It was called Mirroring Gods, and a really inspiring few lines from him there. I really, really enjoyed doing that. On Almeen Diary, there's a question being posed to Almeen about changing your world by changing your life. We've been discussing some of the aspects of sacred water and, of course, the discussion around the Standing Rock pipeline issue, and which has been ongoing for a long, long time right now, which seems to be coming to the fore of all media. That's what this question is about. And the question posed to Almeen was that several students have written to ask, what can we do to support the rights of Native Americans and their efforts to prevent the Standing Rock pipeline project? How can we best do it? There has also been some focus in their questions about the abuse of elders and children in the protests. In some cases, your teachings are cited to make changes within in order to create changes without, but they are asking for help with practical guidance. And Almeen has answered. She says the changes to make are indeed within. Remember, you strengthen what you oppose. Find in your own life where your relationships with others is being used, specifically where it is keeping them from growing and becoming stronger themselves. Examine where you shelter with kindness, serve without their contributing to their own life with as much effort, where you keep picking them up when they fall, etc. Mend your world by mending your life. If there's an aspect that is prevalent like abuse of children and elders, then just stop abusing your inner child. Play and explore, and just allow more light-hearted things into each day. As for the inner elder, take time each day to feed the spiritual, at least as much time as you give to feeding the body. And that's a post recently up on Almeen Diary. Interesting comment there. We talk about the abuse of children and elders. Diane and myself have been speaking a little bit about some of these details that are going on about the inner child, and she's busy working through some of the processes herself that she's feeling within the physical structures of her body. So when she does get onto the show, hopefully next week or so, we'll have to see, if we can plan that, and maybe she'll share some of the details of the insights that are going on there. But the last few weeks we've been discussing aspects of the inner child quite deeply on the show, and looking into some of the insights around that particular aspect. And, one particular event stands out for me that has taken me very deep in the heart, I must say, and it's something that I'm trying to hold in terms of stability and just be the grounding rod for the emotion that is flowing through me. But there was a particular event in Johannesburg at one of the big orphanages there, which is the Johannesburg Children's Home, where an armed robbery took place. And 4 of the young children there were taken hostage and held to ransom outside in the gardens for many, many hours until they were released. But the absolute horror and, shall I say, abuse that these young children took is really just very, very distressing for me. And for anybody that knows us, we also work with a children's home local to us around our music school. So it's close to us in terms of understanding that these already damaged children and very, very dysfunctional on many, many levels are then subject to further abuse. And isn't it like a tight cycle to understand that the inner child within needs to be fed and nurtured? And a lot of the times we've been talking about, children are spoiled, or they're this, or they're brats, or whatever along the way, as we give them different identities and we call them different names. But it's absolutely fascinating just to understand that the inner child also needs to be released to allow it to grow normally and naturally and flourish in the fullness of who it is, because this is part of the inner family. And in order to be self-sovereign, we need the inner child over there. So I'm just sharing with everybody and hopefully not causing too much distress in terms of the images that are now being produced. But the armed hostage situation for me was very, very distressing indeed. And that's something that I'm having to work on and just release and dissolve through beginning to understand that perhaps I myself have been holding my own inner child hostage by being too serious all the time, by taking things personally. And this has been an interesting journey for myself. And I know Nick and I have been discussing these aspects for ourselves as well, how we get, tight-roped as you really get held into particular aspects. And these are just creating states of opposition and duality. So this show for us right now is incredibly deep in our hearts. And we are in gratitude for the moments that we have together with each one of you so that we can share it. Right, Almeen has been talking a little bit on some of the other sites like Lightworker, etc., about rewriting the equation, and that so perfectly fits in with the theme of our show today about the cosmic realities that unfold and as we go on. And she speaks on the function of self-work as the perpetual rewriting of the equation of existence. And I think that's a very important thing for any of us to understand, whether we are following Almeen's teachings or whether we're new to them or whether we're just listening to the radio show. But, life is alchemy. Life is a series of equations. And when you are used to putting 1 + 1 together and expecting 2, that's what you're going to continue to get. But as we look at the DNA that's unfolding, as we look at the ascension attitudes, as the cell structures change within the bodies, within the physical, Almeen was talking about, bringing heaven into matter early on, but that matter is also going to shift. Then we have to truly understand that equations also have to shift. They may get more complex. They may create a different process along the way. But ascension is a state where the equations has to alter and shift and change. As we become more dynamic in our consciousness, as we become more aware, then we are no longer the same. And that's really the theme, the opening theme of the show, where I was asking, when will we actually realize that we are the gods now? And I'm hoping that I'm not coming across in a state of ego, but simply in awareness of the fact that we are all on this incredible unfolding journey of ascension. And one of the things I'd like to share with you, I was listening to an audio by Almeen as I was driving in the car, and I had this incredibly beautiful image, and she talks in it, and she says, you are one with the flowing river, and then you enter into the ocean. And I was just sitting there with this absolute beautiful experience of gratitude, of feeling myself flowing into that ocean. And even though I'm still individual, I'm part of the whole. I'm part of all of that particular experience. And I can feel the currents and I can feel every single particle around me. And I think that is just highlighting the journey that we all, and that there's no end journey for us. It's just a journey of discovery, of new things, where things continue and move on along the way. There was a particular very, very beautiful comment by Almeen. I'll just find it for us here today. Just one moment. She says, life changes yet does not change. In its unfolding, one form yields to another. Though it may seem destructive, there is only spontaneous perfection. And for me, that experience of actually just being one with the river, flowing down, doing what I need to do, going past the rocks, over the rocks, wearing this down, riding around the corner, going through the rapids, etc. All those experiences there. But then that absolute joyous moment of meeting the ocean and stepping into the freedom of that particular ocean, taking me beyond duality, but still experiencing everything that is. So even though I might be one part of, let's say, the physical ocean on one part of the world, I'm still part of it on the other part of the world, and I can have all those experiences at once. So I just wanted to share that with all of you and just say to you, really everything unfolds, everything comes up, and everything is in its perfect state if we can just see it and not be in opposition to what it is that is standing in front of us. So we truly are entering into a state of Godhood, and we're leaving the state of human consciousness behind. And Almin has been very clear that this is not unique to one or two. She's saying that one or two will begin the journey, but ultimately it is for every single person and being on this planet. Let's listen now to a class by Almin, which she talks about mastery and bliss. And then she will tell us in a very short audio that self-knowledge is the only justification for living.
And he finds the unknown constantly. He tries to find the unknown constantly by looking outside of himself. And it isn't outside of himself. That is why the Toltecs teach that the only justification for living is to know ourself, meaning our unknown is within, and that is where we need to be seeking. And that is the only justifiable reason for being in human form.
I frequently refer to the masters, either the ones that gather in what we very loosely term my classes, or the orders of the ascended masters all over the earth that I have the great privilege of working with in translating many of the ancient records that come out of the library. And although I have very carefully mapped out the transfigurations that occur in the fields of a human being as he or she goes through these enormous changes, metamorphosing into a master, we will not touch on that again. That is available for you in previous footage that we have shot in our books. But I want to cover the next step. And that goes like this. You see, a master is someone that has the option of the silent mind. Now, we can have a silent mind, but still be pulled out of the silent mind when we have to relate to someone. If that's the case, and we truly are in silence, when we do not have to relate, then we are indeed in what is called God consciousness. Most of the masters in the Far East are in God consciousness. And that is one of the reasons, incidentally, why they don't mingle with people too much. Who wants to be pulled out of that bliss? And then the second very large stage of mastery, which is the final stage that humankind goes through before they actually metamorphose into the God kingdom, which is a kingdom that lies beyond that of mastery. Well, the silence of the mind that you encounter in the ascended mastery levels is total. There is automatic speaking. There's automatic writing. Sometimes, just so that you don't quite sound like a robot, you do pretend to think. You pretend to have a thought. But indeed, you do not. Your mouth speaks automatically. Now, the big point that I wish to bring home today is that our definition of masters is not one that we should hold onto as though it is the end of all knowledge. I recently spoke at a very large expo in Toronto, Canada, on a panel, and one of my panelists were asked with me and sat alongside of me exactly how one would tell if you met an ascended master. Well, his idea was the same idea that most people have. You see, the mastery that we are accustomed to here on earth, and hence that which has shaped our very definition of mastery, is one that has overgravitated into the known. The one that overgravitates into the known is indeed in a holy place, and one can easily recognize such a one. In fact, when one goes through the various stages of mastery, the stages of the deep, placid bliss, which is where you are totally into the known, is very holy and discernible to most people. When you move into the stage beyond that which you must, or you can never proceed upon the journey of life, which is not a camp, it is a journey of never-ending becoming. But if you do indeed move into the next stage, which is the re-entry of the human experience, while remembering that you are not your experiences, you look very klutzy, you look very clumsy, because you are unused to the way of mortality, even as you pretend to be that character on the stage. And all of a sudden, the master that has progressed beyond the stage in which they have gravitated into the known, into the peace, into the bliss, is suddenly defined as not being holy. You see, my brothers and sisters of light, it is not by gravitating into the known that the greatest growth and service comes to humankind, but by living on the edge, by embracing the unknown, the place where all new knowledge is gained. When a master lives embracing the unknown, evolving awareness for all life, very few people can recognize that person because they are active. They have not withdrawn from life.
You're back in studio with myself, Paul. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for tuning in to Radio Belvaspatar, South Africa. Every week we are broadcasting live out of Johannesburg, South Africa. Worldwide it is now just after 8:30 p.m. South African time. That's GMT plus 2. Thank you for staying with us, and we'd love to have your comments. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love you to share with us what you think about the show, either right now on the show, on our comments page, which is on Spreaker.com, or you can send us an email to info@belvaspatar.co.za, and Belvaspatar being the incredible, miraculous healing modality that Almin has brought forth for all of humanity, and which is growing leaps and bounds around the world. And of course, here within South Africa, our new process and our team starting to create amazing journeys of experience, of online webinars, of online healings, and all sorts of beautiful processes wrapped around these teachings from the mystic and seer Almin, and we're looking forward to sharing them with you. So incredible in that audio track where Almin was talking about that bliss is going totally into the known, that we're into a journey of never-ending becoming, and that's what it felt like to me when I could feel myself entering into the ocean of life, and simply just surrendering to that particular experience and celebrating in deep gratitude and joy of being at one with everything else that is, and yet still being fully aware of myself. And I think very soon we're going to have to discuss the universal belief system of death by rapture. And for me, I need to just say that I think that's something that's going to have to be dissolved more and more by the major light workers around the world, because it is something that is limiting people and creating a process of opposition where we think that life has an opposite, and that is called death. But in the meantime, we have to understand that it is birth and life, and we have the opportunities to rebirth at this particular moment through these beautiful and incredible depth of teachings that we have going on. So Almin has also been discussing something about things that are really pertinent to our discussion this week. And as you can see, we're inspiring everybody to look deep within yourself and seeing what it is that you need to do for yourself to learn your lessons, to put these processes into place. She has been discussing about dissolving inner remnants of humanness. And that was, earlier this particular month. And the question posed to her there was about the fourth principle of high magic, which is something that Almin is still working on. And the question was asked if Almin would please elaborate on dissolving inner remnants of humanness by becoming a fully resurrected being. So I'm not going to go into all of those particular details, but just to show you some of the highlights of it, which are pertinent to it. But Almin is saying there that, our evolution as humans into a different consciousness, into a completely unfolding consciousness, our evolution is experienced according to our experience of time. Initially, we experience time as a linear progression. We see ourselves evolving similarly. We go from humanness to mastery and then to ascension and godhood. And as we reach the unfolding of our godhood, time then becomes centrifugal. Every action has influence that moves outward from its source in rings of standing waveforms. And this means we immediately affect the future and the past by our present action. During this time, we see evolution taking place as an incorporating of one ring of evolution into the next. In other words, and this is very important to understand, we don't discard previous stages, we incorporate them. During resurrection, time is experienced as all things taking place within us in one eternal moment. We have the option to focus on what we want and where we want, and time and space, of course, being one concept of that. Evolution is seen as realizing ourselves to be all things at once. Humanness is no longer specifically emphasized. It has become one with everything else. And why I'm sharing this bit of information with you, and there's more to it as well, by the way, because this comes off the subscription-only site of lightworker.co. So there's more to that particular process if you wanted to go look at it. But why I'm sharing with you that I felt today that I'd become one with everything else by flowing from the river into the actual depth of the ocean and being able to connect with all of that through color, through image, through feeling, through emotion, through experience. Absolutely magical for me. Another process that came up this particular week where there was a release from Almin where she discussed the aspects of, around the Chinese process. And the comment on that is that there's worker drones no more. So for those of you who are in Lightworker, you'll understand this particular thing. But Almin says that everyone brings such clarity on current experiences. Okay, so let me just rephrase this. It's not Almin talking. These are the comments on that actual particular post. So if you are on lightworker.co, please look at the different, or that actual post itself by Almin, but then look at the comments. And I'd like to just comment there that somebody there has posted, I have been feeling very disoriented the last 3 days. On Friday, I felt an absolute change needed in my creative outlets, which is also my work. I spent most of that day teaching myself a new art form, as I simply could not do one more piece of what I had been currently creating. This is an incredible insight and a lot of the feelings that's going on. For me and Nico, we are also quite busy running our companies, running music school and companies, etc. So there's a lot of that kind of aspect going on. And one of the things that I really just said to Nico the other day, it's been brewing for a while. He came to my office and he said to me, and now? And I stood and looked at him and I said, listen, I'm done with this particular process right now in the company. Absolutely done with it. And so beautifully, he just turned around and he said, fine, then let's do something else. And that was it. So we've realized we've surrendered to that particular moment. We're ready to move on and we have to let things unfold and trust as we're going along that we have done what we need to do and that things are working on that particular level. So another comment on that particular post as well. Somebody says, thank you to Almin for explaining exactly what the experience was this past week. Disorientation, a quickening of the heartbeat, finding that which I hold on to holds me back each and every day or by the moment as I'm now experiencing more than ever. And says to Almin, thank you for hearing my heart. Is that not absolutely incredibly beautiful? So I'm just trying to put some threads together for all of us to say, let's recognize where we're at. Everybody is unique on this particular journey, but everybody is also part of the journey. And what one experiences, we all experience. So part of our radio show's beauty is that we can put some of these aspects and teachings together, some of these insights together, and send it out as an inspiration as we piece those threads of life unfolding week by week. So thank you, Michelle. You've said on comment list today that you think one of the things to do is to pay attention to everything that is put in our way, then to observe how we are responsible to it from within. Taking full responsibility for absolutely everything helps one to get out of both judgment and duality. Thank you for that insight, Michelle. We appreciate your input on today's show. What we're going to do now is we're going to listen to another bit of audio from Almin. And in this transmission, Almin explains how the 355 mantras of the Book of Daily Mantras are the threads of all cosmic realities. And this book has just been released and is for sale on Spiritual Journeys. So enjoy getting that. The notes of the Symphony of Individuated Life are part of this, and just like the 441 principles of Godhood represented an alternative reality to the games of man, providing an evolutionary foothold for the gods and goddesses on earth. These principles represent the foundation of the reality beyond, which is the synthesis of life and death, called resurrection. And this is where we were saying. So let's listen to this particular transmission, this audio from Almin. It's fairly new, describing the Book of Daily Mantras, now available.
It is with great joy that we present to you our Book of Mantras, a beautiful full-color, hardcover coffee table book that is designed in a way that it would enhance and empower the life of all truth seekers, no matter what religion or what denomination they have chosen. The book will speak to the truth of their soul, and it will enable them to receive from you a gift that just keeps on giving in terms of empowering and bringing their life to a state of grace. The mantras, although they seem to be temporary, are in fact the strands of existence that make up cosmic individuated life. As you know, different realities have different principles or frequencies that they live out and test in that specific reality. We are all explorers of the threads of existence. But these mantras are in fact part of the threads of all realities that make up cosmic life. For instance, when we received the principles of Godhood, there were 441. Each one, just like these, have angelic presences attached to them. The angels that were with the God realities were called angel gods. And those principles made up a reality so that the God beings in the flesh could live a holy life amongst humanity without continually being dragged back into their games, into their lower evolved reality. So, my beloved ones, these mantras are very specific for cosmic life altogether. They are ancient living principles, the notes of the symphony of individuated life. You can use your book of mantras by placing a fingernail at random in the pages, flipping the book open, and seeing what your mantra is for that day. Think about it, contemplate it, Live as though it is your reality and repeat it often, even silently, to yourself. If there is a group of mantras that particularly call to you, the ideal time period to repeat them to yourself daily is 60 days, minimum 30 days. For instance, at times in my life when I have needed to voice principles of abundance, I would say mantras of abundance. And within 2 weeks, I could see that there was a change in the flow of resources into my life. We ask you to feel the feeling, the ambience of the art associated with these holy mantras, and to repeat them to yourself to purify, cleanse, and empower your life. We thank you for walking this holy journey with us.
You're back in studio with Radio Belfast, South Africa. Today is 24th of November 2016. If you're listening live to us, thank you very much for tuning in. And if you are listening to this as a podcast after its original broadcast date, thank you for listening to us. Please share your comments with us. We love to hear from you. So that was the Mystic and Seer Al-Amin talking about the Book of Daily Mantras, which has just been released and teaches us about the threads of all cosmic realities. And I think it's very important for all of us at this particular point to really take to our heart and understand that we create new realities by living in its higher qualities and becoming those qualities. That is the work that we do that creates different alchemical equations of shifts and change and allows us to then see things in a different way and just begin to have different perspectives. And as we grow those perspectives, so our awareness shifts, and then we become more powerful because we become that which we perceive. Absolutely incredible. I'm just so absolutely fascinated by all the work of Al-Amin. And I just would like to share with you, as we read our environment, as things go on along the way, we've mentioned now and again about our daughter Zia, who, sometimes comes in onto the radio show to share a few things in the middle of things. And we have to pay attention when that particular happens, because during that particular audio clip, Al-Amin was commenting about the truth of our soul. And then little Zia came in to share that, tomorrow is the last day of the school that she's been currently attending for the last few years. And of course, she's created all sorts of relationships and processes there. But she's moving into another school with us, into a homeschool system next year. And tomorrow is her actual last day at that particular school. So she's saying that she's sad and she's crying a little bit. But I'd just like to share with you that this is the aspect of the inner child that we're talking about. It's the last day of school. And early on in the show, we're saying this: have we learned our lessons? Is it not time that we learned our lessons and moved on and created and allowed this new reality of Godhood to enter into our beingness, to enter into our lives, that we live fully in the state of being a God being, being a God conscious being, and living in the full gratitude and celebration of that, instead of living in the old school and between the new school. So really interesting. And then, I'd asked Nico, as that track was playing, what she had said, and she came to talk to me, and he just said to me, well, he's just actually asked her now to go to the kitchen to give her something to do in the meantime whilst we're busy with the show. And he's busy baking cakes for another child and decorating them, and the cakes theme is all about unicorns. And he's asked her now to go and pipe and create icing and cut out the pastry and the the decorations of an actual unicorn. So there you can see an actual transition from the old school into the magic life of living with the unicorns. And of course, there's been some of that discussion as we're going along. So Almeen's weekly prediction, which has been coming up, the rune prediction for November the 28th to December the 4th, it's just been posted up in Almeen Diary, and that's entitled Masterful Interpretation. And you can just see every single section of our show today is just synchronizing and fitting into itself, and one thing is unfolding after another. And it's the rune of masterful interpretation. It means boundless existence without the need for a reference point. Almeen says in it, the rapid release of stagnant and old belief systems in your environment could seem overwhelmingly chaotic. That which destructures leaves space for the next level of evolving life to fill. Maintain the sanctity of your home and keep your balance by finding the magical and the poetical in life. Absolutely incredible. I'm so grateful just that this came in. And again, literally, I'd like to use the word gobsmacked. It might be a bit over the top as a word, but I'm completely just overwhelmed by this aspect of how we're seeing all of these things arriving and coming in. And of course, that's the rune prediction through Almeen from November the 28th. So you can see what our week will be like next week. Is that not fascinating? Right, so we're going to now listen to another track from Jason Silva, and here he inspires us to look at the fact that to be human is to be transhuman.
This episode was proudly made possible by Subaru. So there's a great line by Shakespeare in which he says, "We know what we are, we know not what we may be." And in the age of accelerating technologies in which we extend the cognitive reach of our minds, the perimeters of our humanness with these extensions of self, these exoskeletons, these technological scaffoldings, the wings of our aircrafts and the signals traveling through our smartphones, sending our thoughts electrified at the speed of light across oceans of sky. We redefine and extend what it means to be human. Edward O. Wilson says, we have actually decommissioned natural selection, and now we must look deep within ourselves and decide what we wish to become. We are now the chief agents of evolution. We have reversed engineered the software of biology and are about to rewire and upgrade and redefine what it is to be a Homo sapien. Juan Enriquez uses the term Homo evolutus, the being that evolves itself, that transforms itself, right? Ray Kurzweil, we didn't stay in the caves. We haven't stayed on the planet. Biology, just another membrane to be transcended. Marvin Minsky used to say, will robots inherit the earth? Yes, they will, but they will be our children. I love this idea because we hear the term transhumanism, and what it means to be human is to be transhuman. We are the species that transforms and transcends. We never stopped. We always did. It's what we are. Be sure to check out Second Chance Subaru at revision3.com/Subaru.
And that was the TV personality filmmaker called Joe Silva, talking about to be human is to also be transhuman. Very inspiring. And we've unfortunately had to include the small adverts at the end of there, but that's his audio clip. So we just played it live without editing it along the way. So something extraordinary is certainly happening in our world. Most people, of course, haven't noticed as they stick with their programs and belief systems and think that that is life as it is, and they accept it as such. You and I know completely differently. We know that things are different, things are unfolding, that life is now changing, that the light of the earth is completely transformed. And as we enter into the golden state of light, which is now beginning to manifest as we go along, we are seeing so many different things going on. Let's see the world from a different perspective. Let's see the one world that, that we've got, that everything is going through change. Most people are, of course, unaware of that. Why is the world changing? Well, let's look at some of those points. As I was sharing earlier, no one can stand the employment model any longer, the work model. Most of us are done with a lot of it and finding different ways to work with it and bringing in different states of creativity. Many of us have reached our limits. People I've seen are working with big corporations, can't stand their jobs. It's like a lack of purpose is knocking on their door, and it's coming from inside of them like a yell of complete despair. People want out. They want to drop everything. They want to run away. Just take a look at how many people are willing to risk entering in their own companies, starting their own entrepreneurialistic job or company, and people are leaving on sabbaticals. There's so much work-related depression, people in burnout. Almin spoke about this early in the year, about, I think it was January the 1st, in the Midnight Message as we entered into this particular year. And she spoke about, how we are on so much addiction to antidepressants and what all of that is doing. So the second thing is that we must understand that the entrepreneurship model is also changing, that over the past few years, there's been an explosion of startup companies, of new companies. Thousands of entrepreneurs have turned their garages into offices to bring their billion-dollar ideas into life. It's incredible to watch it all happening, and then as they go through. But there's definitely a new way of endeavor that's needed on the planet, and we are starting to work with it. Many people are doing it already. The third is the rise of collaboration within the planet. Most people have figured out that it doesn't make any sense to try and go on by yourself, and many people have awakened from the each man for himself madness mentality. Stop, take a step back and think. Isn't it absurd that we, all 7 billion of us living on the same planet, have actually grown further apart from each other? Fortunately, things are now changing. We are sharing, we're being more collaborative in our nature, more of our economical and the concepts of economy are being implemented, and it all points towards a new direction despite what we are seeing in the media, despite what we are seeing out there. The direction of collaboration, of sharing, of helping, of togetherness is certainly developing. And then fourth, we are finally figuring out what the internet is. It's an incredibly spectacular thing. And now, after so many years, we are understanding its power to connect. The world is opened with the internet, barriers fall, separation ends, togetherness starts. The help emerges and is available online to all of us as we begin to look deeper and deeper into our lives and into the particular process. Nations have seen true revelations that were started by the internet as the primary catalyst, such as things like the Arab Spring, and we are seeing that developing more and more. Internet is taking down mass control, taking down the mind control of programming. Nobody can be fooled any longer. Big media groups that control the news are no longer able to do so. We go after what we want and we bond to whomever we want. You explore wherever you want to with the advent of the internet. The small are no longer speechless and there is a voice. The fifth one is the fall of over-consumerism, things that have been exaggerated a lot. Marketing has made us go look our products, look external to ourselves, and for too long let me repeat that, for too long we've been manipulated to consume as much as possible as we can to buy every new product launched, and the feelings that we are not right without it. Life wouldn't be the same without it. We're all put into place there, and of course we looked after everything that we could and we chased after it. So fewer people are buying cars nowadays, fewer people are overspending, they just can't do that any longer. More people are swapping, buying used goods, sharing assets, sharing time, space and energy between themselves. We really don't need all of what they told us that we needed. The sixth one that's coming into play is that more and more people are becoming more healthy and going to a state of organic eating. And really, we were so crazy that we accepted eating anything, just so long as it tasted good. But nowadays, they can even make cardboard that tastes good, and we would do that. We've been so disconnected that companies started to poison our food. We just didn't say anything. Then, as we started to wake up, we enabled and strengthened our own patterns, and healthy and organic eating began to emerge. This is definitely going to get stronger and stronger, and I'm aware of the growth of veganism within the planet, and that's becoming a whole movement all by itself. So food production is one of the basic fundamentals of our society. So as we change our mindset, then our eating habits and our way of consuming will all make the big corporations respond and adapt to a new market. That reshapes the whole economy. People are even growing plants and seeds inside their homes as well. And the seventh aspect is there's a huge surge in the awakening of spirituality of many different forms. How many friends do you know that practice yoga nowadays, that do meditation? Spiritually, for too long, the aspect was just for the esoteric folks, those whacked out people, those weird-like and mystic people. But fortunately, this is also changing. We've come to the edge of reason and rationality. We've come to the edge of logic. We were able to realize that with only our conscious mind, we can't figure out everything that goes on here. We know there's something else going on, and I'm sure you want to try work on that as well. And if you have been following these particular teachings and putting them into place and listening to our radio shows, you'll know full well what we've been discussing. So we begin to understand how all these things work, and we are taking control of it all and developing our own processes individually. And the eighth one I think is so important. It is something that we spoke about a few minutes ago when I spoke about our daughters here, about moving schools, but the process to unschool children has become a great big trend. And let's just ask, who created a teaching model for us to all work with? Who chose the classes that we have to take? Who chose the lessons we need to learn in our history classes? And especially in our country, when I grew up, I learned one aspect of history. And as we moved into a new area in this country, now the children today learn a completely new aspect of history. What is right and what is wrong? None of that, because none of it is sole truth. Why don't they just teach us the truth about other ancient civilizations and let us explore about that? Why should our kids follow sets of rules? Why should they watch everything in complete silence? Why do they even wear a uniform? Why don't we just give them tests to prove what they've actually learned is valid for them? So we've developed models that perpetuate and replicate followers of systems that breed people into ordinary human beings. But maybe you never thought of that, and you might even be in a bit of surprise at the moment, but it's happening. And I know for many of the light workers out there, they are freeing themselves fully from all of that and really incredibly watching it happen. There's certainly something extraordinary happening. Silently, people are waking up, and we're realizing how crazy it is to live in this mad society and work through all of these particular aspects. Many people want out at this particular moment. Yes, they might be stuck in it, they might not know how, but the sheer fact of the matter is that they understand within themselves that there is a new way, and slowly but surely, as these doors are opened by the major light workers of the world, you, me, many, many others along the way, as we unfold into our own awakening, as we enter into our own oceans, and as we begin that flow, so everybody else will be able to do that as well. It's no small feat. It takes time. It takes energy. There's no time frames for it. But so long as we can see it, then we know that it is happening. However, this is a journey of going within and experiencing everything within. And as we heard Jason Silver talk there, that the discussion evolves around the Homo evolutus, as the human being has the ability to evolve. We are grasping that so beautifully, and I'd like to just suggest with our last comment right now that the beauty of the mystic and seer Almeen, as she says, we've entered a new state of being called the Homo admirabilis, the one that is absolutely admirable. Really, really incredible. Yes, Darshana, the box of humanity is completely disappearing as each one of us learns to dissolve it. And that's a comment that Darshana just put up for us. So I'd like to say thank you to our master sound engineer, Nico, for being so consistent and being always available for us and creating such a beautiful synchronized show for us as these audio tracks come up and as the studio lights come up and down for us to work with. This is Radio Bell Vaspata South Africa. We are going to be playing out with a beautiful track as a reminder of who we are. We are the Homo Admirabilis, and we're going to play a track by the mystic and Seer Almin to remind us. It is called Beauty Am I. Thank you for joining us. Please send us your comments. Please connect with us. Our website is bellvaspata.co.za. Our email is info@bellvaspata South Africa. We are on Instagram and we are on Facebook under Bell Vaspata Healing South Africa. A very, very active community around us. And we'd like to say thank you once again for joining us and being with us. Send us your comments. Say hello from wherever in the world you are. And until we speak again next week, as we go into some of the different processes and experiences, all wrapped around the teachings of the Seer Almin and the magical healing modality of Bell Vaspata, which works with light and frequency to remove illusion, to transcend all that is, and to create different consciousness. It is I, your host Paul, with our sound engineer Nico, saying good night to you on behalf of our team, along with Diane and Michelle. Goodbye.
You've been listening to Radio Bell Vaspata, South Africa. Thank you for listening and sharing in our discussion. Should you have any questions with regards to the healing modality of Bell Vaspata or have any healing needs, please send us an email to info@bellvaspata.co.za or add comments to our page on Spreaker.com so we can work on providing a suitable response. We now close this episode with the eternal ascension qualities of love, praise, gratitude, and trust, and look forward to sharing again with you next week. Goodbye.